Hello, everyone, and welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today, mostly because we are tackling a subject that, well, almost all of us have encountered at some point, but very few of us actually know how to map out and navigate systematically. Today, we're unpacking a highly structured framework for understanding intense human volatility. We call it the blast zone. And we aren't just talking about dealing with someone in a bad mood here. We're going to dissect the absolute anatomy of an emotional explosion, breaking down exactly how these events operate so you can handle them with total clarity.
Okay, let's dive into this directly by looking at the precise terminology we use to describe these events. We're talking about an emotionally explosive session. Just think about that word for a second. Session. It implies an event, doesn't it? It implies something with a distinct beginning, a peak of intensity, and an eventual end. Now, why does framing it this way actually matter? Because labeling it a session helps de-escalate our own internal panic. I mean, when someone is exploding, it feels like permanent chaos. Giving it a structural start and end entirely removes that feeling. It gives us a framework to study the event objectively, almost like a scientist observing a chemical reaction, rather than just being a victim caught in a storm.
Which brings us to the core reason this framework is so incredibly vital. Ask yourself right now, do you actually know how to navigate the blast zone? When an emotionally explosive session goes off, do you have a roadmap, or are you kind of just covering your ears and hoping for the best? The entire purpose of the analysis we're doing today is to transform you from a passive bystander caught in the fallout into an active navigator. You really need to understand exactly what is happening, why it's happening, and precisely how those shockwaves are traveling through the room.
To give you that roadmap, we are going to break this down into three key areas. Number one, the traits of explosive people. Number two, the internal impact. And number three, the outward shockwave. All right, let's jump right into section one, traits of explosive people, identifying the epicenter. Right at the very center of our concentric circles is the catalyst, emotionally explosive people. It's essential to recognize that an explosion doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It originates from a source. We aren't just studying general conflict resolution here. We're zooming in on individuals who possess a specific behavioral pattern, those who generate intense, sudden bursts of emotional energy. In practice, this isn't just someone raising their voice slightly during a debate. We are talking about sudden, completely disproportionate reactions to stimuli. It's the colleague who throws a binder across the desk over a minor typo, or a family member whose anger escalates from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds, literally bypassing standard emotional regulation.
So before you can mitigate an explosion, you've got to be able to spot the warning signs. Now, what's really interesting about this is that knowing the characteristics of emotionally explosive people moves us away from unpredictable chaos and into the realm of recognizable patterns. Let's detail what these characteristics actually look like. First, there's often a rapid shift in baseline behavior. You might notice sudden, highly rigid body language, clenched jaws, locked knees, or really aggressive posturing. Second, there are specific linguistic triggers. Explosive individuals tend to shift to absolute language right before a detonation. They start using words like always or never, creating this rigid black and white narrative where they are totally victimized. Finally, there's the trait of hypersensitivity to perceived slights. An explosive person often interprets completely neutral feedback as a severe personal attack. If you know these specific traits, the rigid posture, the absolute language, the hypersensitivity, you can actually anticipate the trigger. You can literally see the fuse being lit before the actual detonation occurs, which gives you crucial seconds to adjust your response.
Moving right along to section two, the internal impact, which is the first shockwave of the event.
And this brilliantly illustrates how an explosive session doesn't just push outward. It sends shockwaves in two entirely different directions simultaneously. Inward toward the person exploding, and outward toward everyone else in the room. This dual impact is absolutely critical to understand because it fundamentally changes how we assess the total damage of the event. It is definitely not a one-way street. Let's focus first on that inward shockwave, their impact on themselves. Now, this is a profoundly empathetic and honestly an often overlooked angle. It's incredibly easy to view the explosive person merely as the aggressor, but our blast zone metaphor reminds us that the bomb is destroyed in the explosion too. So what is the actual internal toll? Well, physiologically, an emotionally explosive session triggers a massive fight or flight response. Their nervous system is just flooded with adrenaline and cortisol. This isn't sustainable at all, and it inevitably leads to a severe physical and emotional crash once the session ends. Psychologically, the impact is often deep-seated shame. Many explosive individuals experience a total loss of control during the session, and the aftermath is filled with regret and a really damaged sense of self-worth. By recognizing this inward destruction, the adrenaline crash, the intense vulnerability, the crushing shame, we can shift our perspective from pure defensiveness to a much more comprehensive psychological understanding of what they're actually going through. And finally, Section 3, the outward shockwave, where we look at the collateral damage. This is the environment of the blast zone. The outward shockwave hits the colleagues, the family members, the bystanders. But how does this actually manifest in the real world? When an explosive session occurs, the immediate environmental change is the total destruction of psychological safety. The people around the explosive person begin to walk on eggshells. Communication becomes heavily suppressed. Team members or loved ones will actively hide information, avoid giving necessary feedback, or delay making decisions purely out of fear of triggering another detonation. Over time, this outward shockwave erodes trust at a foundational level. Collaboration just plummets because the environment is dictated by anxiety rather than open exchange. Understanding this concrete outward environmental damage is crucial because it allows you to accurately assess the true cost of the explosion and realize exactly why setting boundaries and navigating the fallout is so critical for everyone's well-being. Let's move to and see how this all builds together. The genius of this framework lies in its precise step-by-step approach. Step 1, learn the characteristics. This is your observation phase, allowing you to spot that rigid body language and those absolute statements before things escalate. Step 2, understand the impact on self. This builds your empathy, reminding you of the shame and the adrenaline crash the other person is facing, which really helps keep you from reacting with pure hostility. And step 3, observe the impact on others. This is your environmental awareness, allowing you to recognize the suppressed communication and broken trust so you can actually repair it. Mastering this triad changes a real-world interaction from something chaotic and terrifying into something predictable and completely manageable.
So the crucial point is this: we aren't just learning psychological concepts to file away in a drawer somewhere. We are developing a true survival mechanism for complex human interactions. I want to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up our exploration today. How does identifying these specific traits and understanding this dual inward and outward impact fundamentally change how you will navigate the next blast zone you encounter? Are you going to stand frozen, or will you use this structural map to find your way through the smoke? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep observing, and I'll see you next time.